You know, we all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands, and the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP Moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy-to-use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show. Hey everyone, even if you don't recognize his name, you have likely seen him on national TV shows like The Piers Morgan Show, Fox News, CBS, Dateline, YouTube, and others. Plus, he is an international, in-demand public speaker. Formerly the #1 FBI most wanted cyber criminal on the planet, now good guy, the U.S. Secret Service called our guest the original cybercrime godfather. Today, he works with law enforcement, has paid his price to society after serving 7.5 years in federal penitentiary, and is an integral part of one of the key players keeping us all safe online. This episode is like no other. Our guest, Brett Johnson, is like no other, and his advice and insight is like no other. He is the host of The Brett Johnson Show and the Criminal Thoughts podcast. Today's episode, we get exclusive behind-the-scenes, no-holds-barred commentary with simple-to-understand advice when we discuss topics like refund fraud, Telegram, a popular messaging app used by children and adults, as well as most cybercriminals as a platform of choice, as well as exploring the notorious dark web. We talk about exit scams. What are they? Why are they so common? And how to look for them, as well as the infamous 23andMe breach. Are we getting to the point that you can't trust anything online? Are you watching or listening to me right now? I mean, think about it. What if I tell you that this isn't even me? It's a deep fake made with consumer-grade AI and machine learning technology. How are we to identify what is real and what is not? This is the story of Brett Johnson and how he is helping all of us stay safer online, even though many of us may not even be aware of it. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top technology leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. From the creators of Vigilance, the newest global technology newsletter, translating cyber news into business language we all understand. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our podcast episodes on Apple and Spotify so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. They're going to just boot us out eventually. So, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies, the FBI most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy, former U.S. Secret Service target, and then the U.S. Secret Service actually noted and called this gentleman the original cybercrime godfather. Host of the Brett Johnson Show. I encourage everybody to check it out. Links will be in our show notes, and a new show that he's got called Criminal Thoughts, the Criminal Thoughts podcast, which I believe is part of, we'll get into this, I believe it's part of the Brett Johnson Show. That's outstanding as well. Brett, sir, welcome to the show in the studio.
David, it has been a minute, and thank you for having me back.
You are always welcome, sir. Your insight, your experience, and the way that you can see through the BS of what we are seeing out there is always interesting. And
it's crazy. I mean, it is.
Let's start off where what we were talking about backstage. So what do you think of our new studio? Like, this is our new studio.
I like it.
Pretty nice. Like, look at the. Yeah, it's got tall ceilings and stuff.
I like the FBI hat in the back.
Actual, yeah. It's
FBI. I've taught it. Well, I've lectured at Quantico, and I've got the challenge coin, the T-shirts. I've not gotten the hat. I'm jealous right now,
man.
Yeah,
I'll. My wife has a store. I'll have her make you one. Just
there. Well, I'm actually meeting with. I've got a meeting scheduled. I've got a meeting scheduled with some law enforcement individuals, and I'm going to ask them, hey, get me back at Quantico at the CISO Academy so I can get a friggin' hat.
Absolutely. So for those that might not know you, tell us a little bit about you. Let's say we're at a dinner party and we meet, and I'm like, hi, I do investment banking on Wall Street. What do you do? Like, what do you say to that guy? Like, how do you introduce yourself?
Well, it's interesting how I introduce myself. At a conference, typically what I'll do is I'll walk up to someone and I'll say, hi, I'm Brett Johnson, criminal, and extend the hand.
And you just gauge their facial expression.
Just let it drop right there.
Okay.
So that's what I do at a conference. If I'm really talking to someone, and here's what's important, and you know this, David, I am not, there's no pride to be had in stealing money from people.
Oh, of course not.
All right.
No, but the story and the arc is where the value is.
Yeah, so, the Secret Service, as you pointed out, they called me the original Internet Godfather. And the way I got the title was I pled guilty to 39 felonies. I was on the United States Most Wanted list. I had an escape from prison.
Not one felony. Not 10.
Right.
You did 39.
Right.
You're like, if I want Travis Kelce numbers, I want like Michael Jordan numbers. If I'm going down, I want 39 of them. So
right.
It was a bad day.
It was not a good day. So the actual indictments, there were like 70 felonies that I was indicted for. Yeah, the plea agreement came down to 39, and I happily agreed to plead guilty to those, because if I would have taken it to trial, I would have gotten a lot of prison time.
Exactly. And we would not be doing this podcast. Well, I mean, maybe.
We would not.
I have gone and visited prisons and stuff, but I don't like the food. So.
Right. But, it's, it was interesting. I was talking to a buddy of mine, Matt Cox, over at Inside True Crime. And we were talking about this. It's the story, that life of crime that opens a door for me. But once that door is open, you see, do I have any value in today's world? And it turns out I do. So, I use that story to open a door. And then at that point, I kind of forget about that story, and we talk about today's fraud and cybercrime and the problems in cybersecurity and things like that.
Well, look, everybody makes mistakes in life. We all do. Everybody has done some things, right? Not necessarily to the degree and scale, but when there's greatness and you do things well, right? You're like, okay, I stole a candy bar. Well, okay, that's fine. Don't do that, right? Bad. But when you're really good at something, right? You create shadow crew on the dark web, and you amass a fortune and draw attention and have people underneath you that have been subject of several of my episodes, I'm still wondering where Jerry Cotton was. If you don't know that episode, please go check out our episode. All our episodes are free here at Cybercrime Junkies. You can find them on cybercrimejunkies.com or on our YouTube channel. But please look at the Jerry Cotton episode because I still think he's alive. I'm still convinced that he will resurface. And he ran, for those who don't remember, he ran the largest, most anti-fraud, like certified by the Canadian government as part of the anti-fraud league up there, the anti-fraud crypto exchange, one of the largest in Canada at the time, and then immediately disappeared at the age of like 30, 31, allegedly died in a little town in India, which is known for where people can recreate their identities. And there's like hundreds of millions of dollars missing. They're all gone. Nobody's ever seen the body. They don't know where he is, but it's a long story, but check that episode out. Anyway, he used to work.
No, it's well worth watching.
Work.
It really is.
For Shadow Crew under this fine gentleman here, where they would sell, among other things, among like Weber grills and hats and other stuff, they would also sell, like Amazon, they would also sell like identities. So he knew how to do that, was my point. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, and just to give my own plug, Cybercrime Junkies, you should not miss out on all of the episodes. That episode's very good, but David does an outstanding job, so absolutely tune into it.
Well, I am humbled, but thank you very much. So Brett Johnson. So, and the point is look, everybody, like, people do bad things, but some people don't learn, Brett. Like, some people don't ever change because, you know, you can make more money faster criminally sometimes, right? In a short term, but long term, it's not sustainable. So you've learned and you have dedicated your life for a long time now doing a lot of good and dedicating your life, protecting organizations, a global, well-in-demand speaker. You've been interviewed by the finest. I'm not included in them. I'm just lucky that you're...
Yes, you are.
No, but like Lex Friedman, are you going to be on Piers Morgan too?
I am.
Wow, that's big. That's huge. Well, you can't make him mad. That you can't do to him what you did to that other guy. What are you gonna?
Doesn't he already start out mad over there at Piers?
He's gonna say a couple quips, and I know the hair on the back of your neck is just gonna go up. You're gonna be like, "Listen, Piers, like, let me tell you, I am outside your house with a telescope and a box of donuts. Let me tell you, man, like, don't you go there." That'll be an interesting one. When is that coming up?
So they're supposed to reach out to me this week to set a date. I am not sure if that's going to be remote or in person, so I guess we'll have to see on that one.
In person would be exciting.
I'm hoping for that.
Oh, that would be great. They do a lot remotely though now.
Yeah.
You know. So,
but I didn't know that channel is evidently one of the fastest growing YouTube channels on the planet right now.
Oh yeah, it's big.
So yeah, hopefully it will translate into my podcast and YouTube channel, getting some more subscribers. Yeah, you've got good content. I like to think I do, and it's just we don't talk about the stuff that mass audiences really want to listen to.
Insert like Taylor Swift into every sentence that we talk about. It might work. Like,
yes.
So that is a great point, Brett. You're like the Taylor Swift of cybercrime. Like, we could just say that, and then the algorithm will pick that up and be like, "Hey, these guys are talking about Taylor. I think we need to listen to that."
Tell you what I'm going to do. Tomorrow I'm recording an episode where I'm calling out this refend.ai company. I posted on LinkedIn about that today. During that episode, I will refer to myself as the Taylor Swift of cybercrime.
It was coined here.
Exactly. I'll give you full credit.
Give me a plug. You are the Taylor Swift of cybercrime. You're like, it's all authentic. You originated, you wrote it, and think about it, like she did, where she has to recreate her old albums but make them better today. That's what you're doing. You're taking the lessons you've learned, you're recreating them new. It's like you had a bad contract with some record company, man. That's all it was at the end of it.
Yeah, except this record company was the federal government.
They can kick our butts, but yeah, that's the issue. So we've got some good topics today to talk about. One of the ones is what we were talking about earlier before we started this recording, and that was the story of Joshua Moses. So for those who don't know who Joshua Moses is, Brett, could you just explain to us who he claims to be? And then
sure,
a little bit of your recent episode, which I encourage everybody to go see at the Brett Johnson Show, Criminal Thoughts. You can find the interview of Joshua Moses. Very interesting topic. As soon as I started watching it, I felt uncomfortable. It I felt like I felt like a kid again, and my dad was yelling at my brothers. Like, that's what I felt like. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, like somebody's getting in trouble, and I don't have my basketball. I mean, what do I do? I can't go play basketball. It's dark out. What do I do? So
Joshua Moses, he reached out to me. He was on the Matt Cox YouTube channel. Matt told him about me, so Joshua reaches out to me because I'm this guy that I will help you if you are trying to gain some traction in cybersecurity. If you've led that ne'er-do-well life and you've turned your life around, I'm more than happy to try to assist you. So we have a phone call, and during this phone call, he tells me that he used to work for, he says, the DNI, and I'm like, that's interesting. Yeah. Department of National Intelligence, I think is what that is. So it's like, so you got the CIA, you've got military intel, you've got all these different intelligence agencies, and DNI is one of those. It's a big one. Okay. So he tells me this, and he makes the statement that after he was convicted of breaching Walgreens, he got away with trying to steal $1.7 million from PayPal, and he claims to be this huge hacker from the mid 90s, late 90s through early 2000s, when I was doing my bullshit. So he makes a statement that he worked for this intelligence agency, did not lose his intelligence security clearing, but it timed out on him. And then later on, after he was convicted, was able to regain that security clearance again. That phone call.
Okay, hang on.
Tells me that.
So what's your impression when you hear that?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You know, we all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands. And the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy to use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show.
So my impression, and the reason I contacted him, or he contacted me, and I agreed to the phone call, he used a screen name that I remember from Shadow Crew, and that screen name was called Havoc. All right. So I had actually spoken to that real individual back in the day, and he was a fairly competent person. Now, Joshua Moses is not that individual, but what got me was on the phone was him saying that he had defrauded PayPal, and I was like, yeah, that could have happened. I hadn't really did any research on him whatsoever at that point in time. So as he's telling me about this security clearance, well, I mean, I've never had a security clearance, but I know people who have, and I know what that whole process is about and how often it happens, and when you don't get it, because he was not only convicted of a felony, but he was also addicted to drugs. So that right there is an automatic, you're not going to get clearance. Yet here he is saying he was able to get clearance. So I'm like, okay. So I hang up with him, and I'm like, who is this guy? So I start searching him. I start paying attention to some other podcasts he had done, some articles that he had written, trying to find all the information I can about him. And it turns out a lot of his story simply did not add up. For example, he's got a blog, and his blog articles are plagiarized. When he was confronted with that on my show, he says, well, I didn't plagiarize them. I used ChatGPT, to which I later tell him that, hey, ChatGPT doesn't plagiarize. I've used it too. So he was plagiarizing articles. He fabricated this story about being a hacker, about stealing $1.7 million off of PayPal and getting away with it. None of it was adding up at all. He goes on the Matt Cox show. He's got his own podcast that he's trying to launch as well. Those two stories don't match each other that he tells. Then he gets on my show and he tells something completely different. For example, on my show, he said he had never been convicted of a crime until I pull his arrest record out and start going through some of the check fraud convictions that he had. Then he admits, well, yeah, I wasn't talking about those. So it was just a continual lie all the way around. Not much else to say about it.
He knows that stuff's public record, right?
Yeah, it's public record. And the thing about it is this is one of the problems that we have, not only in cybersecurity, but I think that across our society. Someone says that they are something, or someone presents you with a resume that looks good, and a lot of us don't verify anything. We just take that at face value and run with it. That's exactly right. So you take someone like Joshua Moses, someone who claims to be this upper tier hacker, computer guru that was never convicted of anything or never went to prison for these crimes. That would tend to open a door. That might get you an interview and potentially a job. But what happens when you get in that position and all of a sudden you don't know what you're talking about? So you not only become a detriment to the employer, but maybe even a danger to the employer, because this guy was absolutely addicted to drugs, and the way he was acting on the show, he may still have some drug issues.
Yeah, you notice some things.
Yeah, he likes to scratch a lot during the show. He's doing a lot of sniffing during the show. It's like that.
Yeah. And you mentioned that he had gone by the username Havoc, and you knew that person back from your days of Shadow Crew. So how could you tell that he wasn't the same guy?
So the story that he tells, he says that he stole $1.7 million off of PayPal, and he gives a very specific timeline for when that happened. And in one of his interviews, he said that he used a prepaid debit card. So I was the guy that across the entire cybercrime spectrum, I'm the first guy that ever used prepaid debits. Right. I mean, I knew that game like nobody's business. So he says he used this Account Now card, and the story that he told, and again, it raised these hackles on the back of my neck. He tells a story that he was receiving these mail advertisements, physical mail, trying to get him to open up an Account Now card. Well, back when he was saying this crime was being committed in 2002, they weren't sending out physical advertisements for these cards. They didn't even call them prepaid debit cards. They called them payroll cards at that point in time, because they were marketed toward Hispanic workers. It was only later that they rebranded that, understanding that 35% of Americans are unbanked to begin with, and they started marketing toward those individuals. Account Now wasn't around when he was saying that he was committing the crime. So he was telling this story, and I'm like, that just doesn't sound right. Then he tells the story about how PayPal doesn't call federal law enforcement. They literally call his local PD, which didn't make sense either. So I start to research all of this, and it's like, no, none of that matches up. None of it matches up. He's not able to tell how he was identified by PayPal. He obviously admits to committing identity theft and breaching and all this other stuff, and says, there just weren't any laws on the books that would have got me arrested at that point in time. I'm like, yeah, dude, there were. Absolutely, there were laws.
Yeah.
So
we've given him more airplay than he deserves. So, but it is an interesting story that is indicative of one of the topics we were going to talk about, and that is like fake resumes and profiles in cybersecurity. You have an interest in this, and I'd like to explore it. So, what are you seeing? I do know it is related in many aspects to deepfakes. Because I do know back in July of 22, the FBI issued that alert about remote workers applying for jobs at companies in the U.S. And there was over 200 examples where this has happened, where they would obtain a job using deepfake technology, fake voice, fake image on a Zoom interview, fake resume, right? And then they would get access, they would be onboarded, they would begin, and then they would go into the systems and steal that data.
Right.
It's not even really a hack. It's a crime, right? It's fraud. It's really not a hack because there's no technical skill or exploit or vulnerability or code being issued. It's impersonation, right? And then they get in, they exfiltrate all the data, fancy word for steal. So what is your take? What are you seeing? What are some of the stories and things that are concerning you regarding that?
The most concerning thing to me right now, Frank on Fraud, Frank McKenna, he posted an article on his blog about ByteDance and their real-time deep fakes that they're able to do now, deep fake audio. So that now it's possible for me to call a potential victim, say in the payroll department, and I can sound exactly like the CEO of the company, and I can tell that victim in real time, having a real-time conversation with that individual to send the money someplace else. That is a very worrying trend. And so right now, ByteDance...
Yeah. So how is ByteDance related?
So ByteDance is owned by... ByteDance is the TikTok people, right? They scrape all the data on the planet, get all the information on the planet, then they use it to make products like this. Now, the interesting thing is, and you know this, David, you get a tool like this. Right now, it's owned by ByteDance. They've not released it to the public at all. But we know that since it's been created, we're going to have public access to something very similar to that. Criminals are very good about using off-the-shelf products and services. They don't really create much of anything on their own. So they're going to use one of these off-the-shelf deepfake systems to launch business email compromise attacks, social engineering attacks, social media attacks. The thing you were talking about employees gaining insider access, that makes that extremely effective all of a sudden. So this is the problem that we're facing, and that's just the audio part. We're going to get to real-time video as well. I really fear that we're going to get to the point where we as a society, maybe across the planet worldwide, we get to the point where we don't trust anything online anymore.
Right. Well, and that will torpedo the ability to leverage the advances in technology, right? Because technology, for the most part, can make our life so much better, faster, more productive, a healthier society, etc., when done properly.
When done properly, So the fake profiles, man. I mean, that's so. Yeah, you've got the insider. It gives you insider access. Absolutely, it does. Today on LinkedIn, I'm calling out a company called Refend.ai. Three students from Berkeley, brilliant kids. They go off and they invent this this company called Refend that identifies a certain type of refunding fraud that merchants are being hit with. I had a call with them. They hounded me late November, early REFEND. Yeah. So I had a call with them late November, early December of last year. And during that call, I meet the three founders two of the founders tell me that the reason that their product is so good and that it's so effective is because they used to be refund fraudsters.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I didn't expect the company to go public as quickly as it did. It goes public, 2 weeks ago. And today I posted, hey, these guys are former criminals, maybe even current criminals. The chances of them being indicted are pretty good because the feds are busily rounding up hundreds of refunders this year. So are you going to let that wolf into the henhouse? And to top it off, I've got recordings of them admitting that they were engaged in refunding fraud.
Oh, oh my gosh. So,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, they have no VC funding whatsoever. They're a privately owned company. But the thing is they're already hooked up with, they're in talks with Shopify. They're in talks with the Loop Returns, a few other companies as well, because these companies really have a problem. Yeah, these companies really have a problem with refunding fraud. So if you have a product that can identify a certain part of that fraud, it becomes very valuable to those companies. The problem is that you're potentially letting in a group of fraudsters who we don't know if they've actually stopped committing the crime or if they're likely to go back to committing the crime or if they are maybe going to share some of the proprietary information with their former fellow fraudsters on Telegram. So, full disclosure, somebody needs to know that stuff before they make a decision whether to hire this company or not.
Absolutely. So you had a post and you've written about recently some people a lot of people have side gigs, right? A lot of people have Shopify shops. They have craft stores on Etsy. They have eBay shops. It's been going on for decades, right? A lot of people do it. And there's been it seems like a massive influx on like refund fraud, right?
Yeah.
How does you had a recent article that you wrote about somebody that was just getting out of eBay after years of doing it, and how does it work? Like, can you just explain to the listeners how does that, just generally speaking, how does it work? Somebody buys something, but then they return it, but somehow they're able to still keep the product and then never have to pay for it, right?
So when we're talking about refunding fraud, to give you an idea of how prolific this type of fraud has become, an article came out, I think USA Today put this out 2 days ago, talking about some of the numbers. Last Christmas season, the amount of refunding fraud, $26.7 billion. All right. Of all the returns that were initiated, the estimate is 16% of those were fraudulent returns. So we're talking about a very huge amount of fraud here. Now, the way that's committed, you get someone that orders a product. It can be a laptop, a cell phone, a swimming pool filter, what have you. Once they get it in, depending on the company that they're trying to defraud, they can tell the company that it didn't arrive. Sometimes the company will send out a replacement. Sometimes they'll say, well, the box arrived, but it wasn't in the box. The company will send out a replacement. Or sometimes the most effective reason is you tell the company, that merchant, that you're going to return that product for a refund. That merchant will issue you a return label that you affix to a box and send that product back. What criminals can do, it's called FTID, fake or false tracking identification. They can manipulate the shipping label to make it look like the merchant has received the item back, but they never do. The merchant thinks they have. They give the money back. The criminal gets to keep the product, and they get their money back at the same time. So that's this type of fraud that we're talking about. It actually redefines cybercrime as we know it today. Most criminals today begin with refunding fraud and then immediately start making money, use that to bankroll their education and other forms of fraud.
Right. And then move on to ransomware as a service or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Wow. So, yeah, it's very prevalent. It's prevalent, and this goes beyond the digital realm also, because you see this happening at the Target stores and other things where people are kind of doing this very similar thing, right? They're
right. So Think about Target or Walmart resellers, or if you're trying to sell a watch on Chrono24, any platform that allows those third-party sellers. It's very easy for someone, a criminal like I used to be, to go in and defraud those people. I go and I order a watch. Like I've got a Tudor on. So if I wanted another Tudor for free, I would order the Tudor, get it in, and then I would tell the buyer that I'm going to return it. Okay. If the buyer actually lets me return it, I would fake the tracking label to make it look like he gets the watch back. He doesn't. Chrono24 thinks he does, though. They give me my money back. I get to keep the watch as well. If the seller does not let me return the item, how do I take care of that? At that point, I institute a chargeback with my credit card company. Tell them that, hey, that was not as described. It does not work. It was fake. Whatever I need to tell them in order to get me my money back. I get the chargeback approved to me. They put the money back in my account. At that point in time, I will usually close that account down so that they can't claw the money back later on.
Right. And the thing is you might be talking about $50 or $100 in one transaction, but this is done at scale.
At scale. Yeah. I talked to a guy over at a seller on Chrono24. He was about to be defrauded of a $20,000 watch. So, and you're right, it's not all $20,000. A lot of it is $100 to $500. But when you're doing this at scale, you're not hitting just one shipment, you're hitting multiple shipments a week, and you're talking about thousands of criminals on each one of these Telegram channels that are doing it at the same time. It becomes a $26 billion Christmas fraud.
So that's a good segue. So let's talk about the growth and evolution of Telegram. So for listeners that don't use Telegram or may not be familiar with it, could you explain it?
Sure. It is an encrypted messaging platform. You can download it to your phone as an app. You can run it through your web browser. It's encrypted end-to-end. You can send direct messages. You can create your own channels. You can run video on there, audio, anything that you want to run. It's an outstanding platform. It truly is. The problem is that it's owned by a Russian who refuses to answer any law enforcement request whatsoever. So when we're talking about the evolution of Telegram for cyber criminals, there's a reason that the traditional dark web is not as in vogue as it used to be. And that reason is the traditional dark web, the Tor browser, has a lot of friction attached to it. You have to download it. You have to configure it properly, or you're going to be identified. You have to know the exact address you're going to. You have to watch out for criminals trying to phish you as you're going to these addresses, any number of things like that. Telegram's not like that. Tor doesn't have a search function. Telegram has a keyword search function. It's almost friction-free. It's encrypted end-to-end, so it's almost idiot-proof in that respect. So as such, most beginning cyber criminals started to flock that way. Their numbers became so huge that the more experienced cyber criminals that were over on the dark web, and they're still there, they understood that, hey, a lot of the money is to be made on Telegram. So now you've got the more experienced people that are setting up channels on Telegram as well. So you've got hundreds of thousands.
Okay, so are they setting up stores like marketplaces on Telegram? Or is that just be used as the communication channel to the dark web to go find the store?
No. So what's interesting, and this is one of the really interesting things about the differences between Telegram and the traditional dark web. On the traditional dark web, you will have a marketplace. You'll have Incognito. You'll have Archetype. I'm a huge Archetype fan right now. It's like the premier marketplace on the dark web. Telegram doesn't have yet that marketplace type function. So what will happen is you'll have an individual that will create that channel, whatever the fraud channel is, AIO, Darknet Market Forums, whatever that is. He'll create that channel. In the channel will be advertisements of whatever drugs or criminal products and services that he and other people are selling. If you want to buy that, then you have to direct message that seller And then on an encrypted messaging on Telegram, as it's encrypted, you have this conversation with this individual. Yes, I want to buy that 8 ball of cocaine. Okay. At that point, he will tell you that you can pay. And this is the weird thing too. A lot of the cells accepts Cash App. They accept Chime. They accept Bitcoin. Those are traceable. Right. And that's one of the things that you see too about Telegram is the operational security from the criminal point of view is horrible. You get them posting selfies of each other. You get them doxing each other. Any number of things like that. And as such, law enforcement is having a field day identifying and picking up these Telegram criminals. There was, I haven't even talked about this yet. There was about 4 days ago on Twitter, a gentleman reached out to me. He messaged, he was like, have you heard about the quantum exit scam? And I was like, I was thinking it's a cryptocurrency scheme. And I asked him, and he's like, no, Quantum is a drug dealer on Telegram. And I'm like, no, hadn't heard of that. What's going on? Well, this guy disappears to the tune of $1 million. He owed people $1 million. They had put that much money on his platform, had made that many orders with him. He was selling drugs and he was selling account logins, things like that across the board. He was a very trusted individual on Telegram, and he helped a lot of other criminals build their channels as well. So he was widely respected. He goes missing. Most of the community, they were thinking that he had exit scammed, that he had just simply taken the money and ran. Now, the problem is that he had been identified by his fellow fraudsters and drug dealers months ago. They had posted his docs, they had posted his girlfriend's name, his address, pictures of his home, everything else across the board. So I'm sitting there thinking, law enforcement really likes to pick up, especially drug dealers right now, because most of the drug dealers on Telegram are also involved in fraud. Those drug dealers have home addresses of all the people they've been shipping the drugs to. So they like to pick these guys up. And I'm thinking that, maybe not an exit scam. Maybe just law enforcement picked him up and he's singing like a bird right now, which is probably exactly what happened. But you see this stuff, man. That's the thing is on the traditional dark web, you have an operational security, that idea of a criminal doing the things they need to do to make sure they're not identified, and they take that seriously. On Telegram, it does not work like that. It absolutely does not. On Telegram, they understand, and you'll see this in the channels being talked about. There are so many of them there that they are well aware that law enforcement cannot prosecute.
Well, it's the whole crowd mentality, right? Like when
That's it.
When two cops show up to a big party, they can't all, like, they could disperse and run away, and they can only catch a couple of them.
Right. So who do you look for? You look for the sellers, you look for the big buyers, and the rest of them, no.
Mm-hmm. Wow, but they don't have the anonymity necessarily that they do through the traditional dark web.
No, they don't. That's the weird thing. They don't even respect their anonymity. So it's not only taking selfies of themselves, it's not only doxing each other, it's also posting pictures of evidence of the frauds that they're committing. They'll post full credit card numbers of the cards that they're using. They'll post receipts that have the order numbers of the merchants that they've defrauded. So it becomes very easy all of a sudden to start tracking these individuals down.
Wow. I know. I've seen a lot of your posts on that. And some of the guys were coming after you. It looked like one of these guys was like, "Oh, I got a gun, man. Stay away from me." And you're like, "Okay, really? Okay." Look, if I had $1 every time somebody threatened that, right? You're like, okay.
Well, unfortunately, I have had a gun pulled on me before by law enforcement more than once. So it's not my first rodeo on that one. So, David, I love it. I love you. I love your show, man. You're great.
Fun, man. That would be great. And plus, I can make myself say a bunch of things I would not say. And then I could just say, that wasn't me. That wasn't me.
Wasn't me. It was Brett. Brett did it.
Right. I love it, man. Thanks so much.
David, take care, brother.
To you, buddy. See you.
Yes, sir. Bye, sir. Bye now.
Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us. Well, things aren't getting any safer online, and we're excited to tell you about our exclusive offer for Aura, which is linked in the show notes below. Hey everyone, this is your host David Morrow, and we often get asked about individual safety and ways to protect loved ones or small business employees when they're online. So we turned to our friends at Cyber Threat Group, a full-service security consultancy located here in the US, and they told us all about Aura. You might have even seen actor Robert Downey Jr. in their television ads. Look, identity theft isn't cheap. The FTC reports that Americans lost $8.8 billion in identity theft and personal fraud this year, and can cost you personally hundreds of thousands of dollars. Aura provides it all. Financial and identity theft protection, a lightning-fast VPN for online privacy, antivirus, a password manager, and even parental controls for safe gaming and spam call protection. So protect your family or your employees when they get online. Give the gift of online safety. Check out the link in our show notes from our friends at Cyber Threat Group today. Aura is a great way to protect yourselves online. Check out Aura today and stay safe online.